Hello, I'm Rebecca of the Garden Gate Flower Company.
And I'm Grace of Grace Alexander Flowers.
And we've come together to create Stuart and Alexander Gather at the Garden Gate.
A podcast taking you behind the scenes of two gardens, what we've been up to, inside, outside, and out and about. Hello.
Hello. How are you, Grace?
Good, I'm good. Not as knackered as you, clearly.
Not because you can see me, but just because I was actually moaning about how busy I've been.
No, that wasn't...
Not as knackered as how you look, Becca.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not that sort of friend. Who's going first then, telling our stories?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to go first? Shall I go first?
Oh, you start with me, because then I can actually just answer, and I've got a list of questions here which came in. Are these lists of questions that people...
Oh, that's the quick fire
this is
at
the
the
quick
end.
fire questions. Oh, okay.
Yeah. We were going to start with just a bit about you and how you ended up here.
So go on, you interview me, and then I know what to do, because I'm not used to this bit.
I was thinking, in preparation for this, about how deep we need to go and where we need to start. So it's really weird. Whenever I get interviewed for magazines and things like that, they always want to say, like, did you learn this as a child and things like this? And I'm like, gosh, that's a very deep question. Is that a common question? Do you get that?
Yeah, I think magazines particularly want to know that. So where did you find your love for gardening? How did it happen? And things like that. And yeah, and do you remember? I don't know, there's always that quintessential, I remember my grandmother growing sweet peas and I fell in love with them. That seems to be the classic. I did not have that. No, I didn't have that.
What did you have?
So I did have a grandfather who I do remember, very interestingly, they had quite formal gardens. There's two things I remember about my grandfather's garden. One is he had gates to the drive, a little drive, nothing grand, but these gates, and next to the gates where I used to always have to get out the car and open the gates for my dad, obviously to drive in, being the child you had to do that job, there was a beautiful Viburnum mock orange, and the scent was I just remember the scent. And weirdly, I remember loving it at the time, but it was only into my adulthood, I think when I started Garden Gate and was starting to think about flowering shrubs and centre shrubs, that I came back across this mock orange, and it just took me back to my grandfather's drive. So that's one distant memory. The other is that the back garden used to back onto a tennis court. I wasn't so interested in the flowers, more about the free tennis balls that we would find, my sister and I would find at the back of the garden. But it had a very pretty garden, quite formal, a bit of lawn, flowers around the edges. But then what it did have was a veg patch at the back, behind the garage, and then a row of roses, like 2-3 rows of roses. So they weren't... Although there were roses, the roses were grown very much as a picking area. And I remembered that being another significance of growing up and think back years and years ago, one would have had a picking garden. You wouldn't be picking from part of your garden, would you?
The ornamental borders and herbaceous areas and things like that.
But my first kind of trip into gardening was when we bought a new build house as our first home, me and Andy, and it looked like a sort of a walled prison, because we had a corner plot, and the house, they stagger them, don't they? So we ended up with a bit of a wall of next door, and then because it was the end, we then had this red brick wall all the way around the edge and the side wall of the garage. So everywhere we looked was this just wall everywhere. And I remember at the time just thinking, we've got to make this just look nicer. And I really enjoyed it. I had some major disasters. But I was really... my mum was really into roses, and her garden, even at the farm, the main thing she loved growing was climbing roses. Typical farming house. Literally, the fields go right up to the garden initially. Although she did carve out some garden for herself. But I got roses in there. But I do remember growing cabbages in amongst the flower beds. That was quite exciting. So I just mixed everything up. I didn't have room for a veg patch, so I just literally would plant lettuces in amongst flowers. And I loved it. But I would say to anybody, don't go back to your house if you've done a lovely garden, because I did go back a few years later, and they'd ripped out the climbing rose at the front and all the lovely shrubs at the front, and they'd gravelled it over, as so many people do, with no plant life whatsoever, but just low maintenance nothingness. It's just terrible.
Oh, the heartbreak.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
So never go back.
But did you grow up on the farm then?
I did, yeah. So I grew up on the farm from about the age of about 10 in Foy, and it was absolutely fabulous. And it went organic, and my stepdad was actually he was the first in the area to do organic farming. And it was quite funny, really, because I think it was quite a leap, really. It was quite it took a while for farmers to get into it, didn't it, really? So they were quite early in those days. Growing up, we had a milking herd and sheep, and we've kept pigs and we've kept chickens. We haven't kept ducks, but we have had chickens. And it was really lovely. It was really lovely growing up in that environment. But my reintroduction back into working and starting the garden gate was, and lots of people will know if they follow me for a long time, I had a business partner, Maz, and her and I were good friends, and she had seen this article in Gardens Illustrated, I think it was, and it was Charlie Rymer's garden in Wales, and we had talked about slow food movement and how the wedding industry the flower movement wasn't really like it was in the food movement. It was so far behind. And I, at that time, had been made redundant, but had started my own business making curtains and blinds because I have a background in textiles. So it was really good to work around small children. But it was a little bit boring. I loved it. I was working on my own, which, if anyone's listened to this podcast and the percentage of how much I talk, will know that I need to be with people. Always. Maz sort of said to me, "What do you think of this article?" And I was like, "God, this is lovely. Yes, this is great." And my mum had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I just said to Maz, "Wouldn't that be lovely if Mum could look out onto a field of flowers?" Because we had this old pony paddock in the front. And I just had this idea that it would just be really therapeutic for her. It would just be, how nice would that be to sit in bed or not feel particularly well and look out on that. And that's really how the garden gate started.
Amazing. Yeah, that was 15 years ago? 16?
15th
17?
growing year this year. So it'll be June, 15 years. I think that's right. 2011? Yeah.
I'm 11 and a bit years
Is it
in, and you were a
years?
couple
Is
of
it
years ahead of me.
Might be 14 years this year. Might be my 14th growing year. I always get asked this, and I really can't remember. But it's either 14 or 15 years. I'm sure somebody will message in and go, "Becca, it's wrong." Feels like 25 sometimes.
Well, yeah. I used to have 2013 written on my logo for reasons which will become obvious when I talk through my story, so I can always remember when it was. So I'm 11 years this year.
But so we were one of the first ones to grow British flowers. And really early on, there weren't many people. Rachel, Green and Gorgeous, she had a business partner in the very early days as well. So I knew of her, and I knew of, obviously, Charlie. But I love Charlie. I hope Charlie won't mind if she listens to this. I'll never forget. I was coming back from visiting some family, and we decided to meet at Charlie's place, which was when she was in Wales. And we arrived, and of course, full of energy and excitement about what we were going to do, and parked the car on this rather windswept sort of field. And this lady was sat slumped in a deck chair sort of thing, looking, I'm sorry, Charlie, quite thoroughly pissed off. And I said to her, "Oh, we're here to look at the garden." And she ushered me one way. And I can't remember if it was at that point or I actually went to chat to her. But I said, "We're going to start a cutting garden. We're going to start growing British flowers down in Cornwall." And she looked at me and she said, "Anyone thinking of starting a flower business after the weather we've just had, good luck to them. Bloody nightmare." Something like that. And I just remember thinking, oh, she's really grumpy, but okay, perhaps it's just a bad day. She was lovely, but I always think back to that moment and think, I've now had so many people come to me and say, "You're thinking of growing flowers." And there is initially that feeling when you just go, "Well, good luck. You've just had a complete disaster with the slugs. I've just had this go wrong. We've had no rain. We've had loads of rain." She was obviously, well experienced with growing flowers at that stage and knew the pitfalls,
Yeah.
She had a fabulous garden. Absolutely fabulous garden. It was stunning.
She moved to Dorset, though,
She moved to Dorset, yeah. I think she took her mum's house in Dorset. And I message her from time to time, and it's lovely. It's really nice to keep in contact with those people. And Rachel, obviously, as well, was a huge part of mentoring Maz and I when we set up as well. We went and sat with Rachel And it was really invaluable just sitting down, and I just contacted her. And it was a woman, I think she'd done a few courses, but it was a little bit before I think the courses really took off for her. She's just such a knowledgeable person. Just fantastic. And again, like Charlie, very down to earth. There's no rose-tinted glasses, which in a way it's quite good, because it's a really hard thing we do. It's not easy.
What qualities do you think someone needs to do what you do, to do what we do?
I think you need to be well, I found it's been really helpful because my background was being originally a PA. So although I was in textiles, I went to try and find my fortune in London, which never quite worked. So I became a PA and was very organised and able to do a lot of the background things. Growing flowers is one thing, but I think what I found when I've taught people is that you've got to be able to play to your strengths. You've got, whilst it's really good to have your highlights, you also need to know where you need help, and you need to get help in. So if you're not very good at finance, then get somebody to help you with it. If you're not very good at designing bouquets but you love growing them, look at teaming up with a florist maybe that really would like to team up with you. And I think when Maz and I started, we had a good combination between the two of us. We were really complementary. But I think what you do need flexibility. I think you have to be somebody that is happy to almost work 24/7. I never forget seeing something recently that said, I don't work 9 till 5 because I want to work, 24? I work 24/7 because I don't want to work 9 till 5. That's what it was. And it is, It really is like farming in that sense that it is hard to go away. So you need to love your garden. You need to love your job. I don't think I could do this job unless I loved it, because the amount I put into it, the energy, the time and the effort is not something you would do if you were only 60%, 70% invested. You do have to love it.
Is there anything you'd do differently if you could have your time again?
In terms of a job?
In terms of Garden Gate.
Oh, in terms of
Just
Garden
in terms
Gate.
of...
I was going to say, I could tell you that.
Yeah.
In terms of the Garden Gate, I would love to have had the good fortune to have been able to have my own land. That's probably been the one thing I remember even in COVID. And I think even I read something once, and I cannot remember what it was, but the gist of it was that to have and own a garden is such a privilege. And I think that Octavia garden, that was one of the things that came out of the garden at Chelsea, didn't it? Was that everybody should be able to find their own natural rural space. And I think the
access to green space.
Yeah, access to green space. And I think what saddens me slightly, or I feel my heart aches a bit, and it still does, is that the farm was a tenanted farm. So when my mum and my stepdad retired, this beautiful space I had to go, and I didn't have the funds where we are in Cornwall, and I suppose everywhere. I'm sure people listening all over the country will relate to this, is that land has become so expensive. And I never really thought about it until I then thought, hang on a minute, I'm having to run a business and I can't find it. This isn't just a playground for me. This could actually cripple my entire way that I've decided to start my business because I can't get land. And that scared me. Still to this day scares me quite a lot, that I would love to be able to say this is mine. Because, as you know, you need to put shrubs and trees and things in for such a long layover time before you can use them. And it did make me think in COVID how lucky we are to have, what I've got at home, which is a very small garden, but how lucky I am to have this. Don't just have a window box or a balcony. But I think that's made me really strive to enjoy raised beds, pots, because you can garden on a very small scale and still find some joy. But yeah, if I had my time again, I wish I could have, and I can't, but I wish I could have been able to get some land.
And what's next for you?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's a funny thing with me now. I do feel like trends now do go round. So I've seen the same trend now, I think 3-4 times. And I sort of think, God, if I see it 6 times, it's time to retire. And I love, the backbone of my work is wedding work. I can't get away from that. And I do absolutely love it. I've had three fabulous clients this year, 2 fabulous clients just this weekend. Absolute joy to work for. And one of them today just said, Becca, you're so talented. And it was really, and it's hard to take something. First of all, you want to go, oh no, don't be silly. And then I just thought, oh, this is really lovely. She was really kind, and it does make me want to keep doing it when you have lovely feedback like that, and just joy when you bring flowers to people. I think for me though, I've never wanted to do 70, 80 weddings a year. I've never wanted to do that level. But this is, I've said to people and the clients, look, this is not a part-time job. This is a full-time job, and I need to work. And if I wasn't doing this, I'd have to be doing something. I would like the garden gate to be a little bit more evened through the year. So I do a lot of styling work and brand work. And I think that's where now, with the experience I've had and the styling that I do in terms of setting up weddings or events or the brand work, I've been very grateful to be able to be offered. I feel now that's an area where that could grow a little bit, and that just evens things out a bit, because it is a bit feast and famine, obviously, in the wedding industry. And there are really times when part of me would love to go away and do something in May, June. But like I said to you, that's why I said, what do you need to be this sort of person? You do need to be fairly content at staying at home. But I haven't ever wanted to create Garden Gate as a huge team of people. I've often said to my clients, look, it is me, and I've wanted it to be me. I want to be the one delivering your bouquet, or one of my family members delivering your bouquet. It's a family affair in that sense. My mum comes to the weddings, my husband helps with the breakdowns sometimes. It's quite nice, you know.
Thank you.
That's okay. Right.
A little insight into the story of.
Yeah, exactly. So, your turn.
Yeah, my turn.
What was your journey into Grace Alexander and Gather, I should say, really? Well, you've got the Grace Alexander and Gather, haven't you, really? I feel like you're twofold.
Well, it wasn't where I was going to start the story, but I guess I should confess that Grace Alexander isn't actually my name either.
I know, I think that's so funny.
Oh, it is so funny. I had a job. Mm-hmm. I had a very traditional sort of career trajectory. I worked very hard at school, and I went to university, and I qualified as a clinical psychologist in 2009. Trained in London, lived a couple of really lovely years in London. So relevant in that I am either very urban or very rural. I'm allergic to the suburban. So I grew up on a farm like you, not a farm quite as big as yours, but very rural Warwickshire childhood. Went to lots of gardens, just thought that's what everyone did. Just had no idea that people didn't get taken to gardens every weekend. Practically grew up in Wisley. And so qualified, knew I wanted to work with children and families, and found my dream job in Somerset, which is somewhere I'd never really been. But I slightly threw the dice, and I thought, there you go, that's the perfect job for me. And my then boyfriend was in Plymouth, as was my brother and his family, so I thought, that's close enough. So ended up in Somerset, and just my life was just ticking along. I am one of those people that has no moderation at all about anything, really. So I went in hard. I worked incredibly hard in this organisation. And one day we employed somebody to just help reorganise us and move us on to the next level. And I can still remember the night before she was due to start, somebody that I was aware of from a different context, and she sent an email out that I just thought, oh my God, I smell trouble. And I arrived at work on the Monday morning, having not slept a wink. I don't know what premonition it was that I knew something was coming, but I knew something was coming. And arrived at work, and she basically told me to go home, get out. And she didn't want me on the premises. So up until that point, I'd practically run the place. I was in charge of a lot of things and doing a lot of the leadership work, and she just couldn't cope with it. So I entered into a sort of 9-10 month period of my life where, and I'm sure there's people listening who've had careers where They have massively, massively over-invested their identity in their career. And I honestly felt like gravity had stopped working. Like, I could not make sense of the world. I couldn't work out what was happening. I couldn't work out who I was if I wasn't this person. I couldn't work out what I should do if I wasn't working. All of this sort of mad stuff. So I sat at home and I thought, what on earth am I going to do? And a bit like you were just talking about the farm, I think, so really, just completely serendipitously, my cottage, which not that long before I'd rented it to start with and then I'd bought it, came with a little bit of sheep paddock at the back, which nobody else wanted because they had to mow it or put some sheep on it. It was just a hassle for everybody, so it got passed around like a hot potato, but happened to be associated with my cottage on the deeds when I bought it. So I got this little paddock. We'd had a couple of sheep on it, we'd had to mow it was a nightmare. But I sat at home and I thought, I have built my house on rented land. I've lent on something that wasn't mine, and I am going to do something that no one can ever take away from me. And because I owned that little bit of land, and it felt like I needed something not psychological, I needed something incredibly practical and tangible and just solid. So I said, that's it, I'm going to grow flowers. And everyone thought I was completely mad.
Oh,
I did, but because of the job that I do, so I work in child protection, so obviously I meet a lot of incredibly unpleasant and dangerous people. So I thought, I don't really want to set up an Instagram account in my actual name because somebody will find me and hunt me down and kill me. So I thought I'm going to recreate like a whole new identity. So why not just have a whole new name?
I love that. Why didn't I do that? That's what I would do differently.
Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend it to anyone. I really do. And I occasionally think, if anything happened to me, I'd just set up a new name, a new identity, and I'd start all over again. Totally, would fully behind it as just a refresher option for life. And so actually, Alexander is my husband's first name. As a feminist, I'm never going to take his surname. He does not own me. I'm not chattel. However, I love his first name. So the name that I picked out of the hat was Grace Alexander.
Which does
and
work
also
so
my
well.
birth. It's lovely, isn't it? My birth name is a name that nobody can spell. And so I spent 35 years of my life having to spell it over the phone. And now, I tell you, the bliss of just ringing up and saying to somebody you're trying to book a table with, Grace Alexander. Sometimes they'll say ER at the end and I'll say yes. And that's it. Oh my God. I can't.
Do you know what? With the name thing, I can wait to change my name because my maiden name was Nunn and I went to a convent school. So just putting that out there, how quickly I was happy to get rid of Nunn. So I was happy to take Andy's surname. No worries.
Well, now I'm going to tell you, and if you're listening to this and you hate your name, you can change it.
Yes, you can.
You can change it.
Yes.
And actually, it's really not a big deal. Everyone thinks this is like a massive thing, but it's not. It's incredibly lightning.
And also,
and
what I
empowering.
should.
So anyway.
And also, what I want to ask you, because I think what also we didn't cover, and I think this is probably quite a good segue in with asking you the next question is, how did we meet? Because you obviously decided you wanted to grow flowers.
The postcard.
There you go.
Where did I get the postcard
Well, that's
from?
what I'm trying to work out, where you actually got the postcard from. So we created, when we started, this really pretty postcard, and it's me in my wedding dress, and it's a gathered bouquet, and if anybody with any experience in floristry will actually look at it and go, well, she didn't strip the ends, there was water dripping off them, it was also very messy. But you see, back then, as we said 14 years ago, nobody cared. It's all very changed now. You couldn't get away with that now. Yeah. And so our first introduction to each other was you coming to our open day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Our open garden.
Yeah, I remember it because my husband and I come down to Cornwall once a year for holiday. I have dogs, so I can't go anywhere else. It's tent in Cornwall, that's it. That's my week away. And I messaged you and said, can I book to come on your open day? And we literally booked the dates. We booked the holiday dates around it. And then, was it the weather or something? You were going to cancel it, but you said to us, you can't because there's this girl coming.
Yeah, but then it was really, was it really sunny or did we do two? One was,
it was really sunny.
It was really nice.
It was really sunny.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I got cold feet.
It was gorgeous.
Maybe I was panicked. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't going to let you get away with
No.
it. So, yes, maybe it was the Flowers from the Farm conference that I saw the first
Actually, it
postcard.
might well
I
have
don't know.
been. It might well have been Flowers from the Farm. Very early doors, we were part of Flowers from the Farm. Yeah.
We were,
and all I just remember is this lady arriving, very forthright, straight through the garden, straight over to me, and showing me this postcard and going, "This is why I want to grow flowers, and I want you to help me." And I just remember, "Hi, I'm Becca." And that was the first time I met Grace. I was like,
hilariously, I've never grown any of those flowers, ever.
No. But something triggered you, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
But tell me, though, so you had a big change, though, didn't you? Because you came in a couple of my courses and looked at floristry.
Yeah, I mean, I did a couple of weddings.
Yeah, but the journey together was not... there was a curve in it, wasn't there? In your decision-making.
Well, I think... Yeah, so I think when we first started, there wasn't really a model of anything except you grow flowers and you do weddings. And so for a while, I grew flowers and I did weddings. Like, I did a bit of that for a while, and wholesalers, unless you're growing on a big scale, you don't make any money from that. But as these things happen, the person that threw me out of my job got fired under horrendous circumstances, which legally I can't talk about. And so I got my job back. And it's a bit problematic to keep going to work and say, "I'm really sorry, I've got to have Fridays off because I've got a wedding on Saturday."
Yeah.
And it just wasn't an option. It just wasn't an option. I have spent now the last 10 years, 11 years, the whole actually being at home and not being a psychologist didn't last very long, I have to confess. And then I was right back in it. So what I really needed was a way of... Actually, I didn't need a business at all, but I loved it too much. And actually, what I couldn't step away from is I couldn't/can't. The people I've met in the flower world are the nicest people I've ever met anywhere.
Aww.
And being part of that community and part of that culture and part of that world, I couldn't let it go.
Do you know what? I'll second that. You're absolutely right. The thought of closing up Garden Gate and not being in it, in the gang, bumping into, like we did, the photographers at the weekend, seeing you, Millie, when we've been up to Chelsea before, that I would be... You're right, such lovely people. And I'd be so sad to not be part of that, because that world would carry on without us.
Oh, of course it would. We're old now. I know. Would carry.
We're old. Can we be in the old gang? I do.
We can be in the old gang. I mean, I don't know if you've ever met any other psychologists, but so sorry if any of my actual friends are listening to this. I don't think they will be. Most psychologists are completely potty. Right. They're completely nuts, and they're really hard work. And yeah, there's very few of them that I really genuinely get on with. Yeah. And I think I can count the number I socialise with on the fingers of one hand.
But you also said to me that this was a really good decompression for you. This was the balance.
No, that's absolute. I've never said that. I've never said that.
I'm sure you said this was what you needed, something creative.
It was to be the antidote to the person who tried to sack me. It was the antidote to somebody telling me I was worthless and useless, was to go off and be a great success in some other sphere that she couldn't get to me. I go to work for a break. I go to work.
Oh, do you? That's
my job is my hobby. Child protection is my hobby. Like, I'm very passionate about child protection. I live it and breathe it, and I'm exceptionally good at it.
Do you have a cape? I feel like you should have a cape.
It's my hobby. My business makes me more money, but my God, it's more stressful.
Yeah, it is stressful. Growing flowers and doing things like that is stressful. So how did Gather begin then? And when did it start? What year?
How did Gather begin? So the issue I got into with the weddings and things was I just couldn't balance it with work. And also, child protection is very often a crisis that will happen at the last minute, and I have to drop everything and run. And flowers are very time sensitive. You can't be messing around with them. You have to be up early. You have to be conditioning them. You can't
leave them out of water. No.
Yeah, you just can't, or you just be doing too much the night before. It's just not an option. You have to be all over it. And so I thought, do you know what you can do in advance and just let them sit there until you're ready to use them? That's seeds. So I can still remember where I was when I suddenly thought, seeds. And it came from my wedding invitation.
Oh, okay.
So our wedding invitation.
Yeah, not yours and mine, by the way. No.
No. I shouldn't say my wedding, but anyway, it was our wedding. So I saw just on Instagram some really beautiful work by Tanya of Bureau Stationery Graphic Design, and she was doing this incredible cotton rag letterpress work, which I just loved. And I knew instantly that I wanted to have her for our wedding invitations and our stationery for the dates. And I was looking at it and I was just thinking, oh my goodness, why wouldn't this just make the best seed packet? Why is no one making beautiful seed packets? Why are they always so awful and from the garden centre? And so I commissioned her not only to do the wedding invitations, but also to design me some seed packets.
Oh, okay.
And then I started selling seeds, and that was amazing. First of all, because nobody else was doing it. Second of all, because I could just sit there at 9 o'clock at night if I needed to, put Midsummer Murders on. I love ITV3, and I would just pack seed packets for forever and be sending off orders. And it was amazing, and it blew my mind how successful it was. Did a couple of markets, did a couple of shoots for people, and it just completely took off, which was wonderful. And then that it outgrew what I could do. And a bit like you, I don't want to be a massive team, and I certainly didn't want to outsource stuff, and I didn't want to start commissioning people to do things. Like, this was very much me. So if you ever order seeds from me, you will get a note from me, written by me. It will be post by me to the post office, usually on my way to work or on my lunch break. So it got to the stage where I couldn't keep up with demand, and I thought, and it was very much before Patreon started, before any of those models started, but I thought, I think my book was out by then. Was my book out by then? And I was very much writing as well as growing, and really enjoying that, and really getting into the photography of things. And I thought, actually, I need to really broaden what it is that I sell, and that can't just be the seeds. I can't keep up with demand. It's me and my kitchen table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you can only buy my seeds if you're a member of Gather, and for £10 a month you get, and it still hasn't gone up, this is about 4 or 5 years ago now, still haven't put the price up, you will get access to my seed shop, but you will get loads and loads of other stuff. And that was the start of Gather.
I remember thinking you are so savvy, because like you said, you did get in very early in the subscription model, didn't you? And and really clever. And I obviously receive your Gather membership, and it is lovely. The email that drops in is so beautiful, and there's some really lovely ebooks there, which I've actually done some of them for you, obviously. So the rose one,
the roses one,
which is really lovely, and it is really beautiful. If you weren't doing this, would you have was there another option other than Gather? Because obviously I know you didn't do the weddings were too hard to balance, and like I was just saying, it's all or nothing. You can't be in it by 80%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Was there another option other than the seed business? Did you have another sort of just tucked away sort of idea? Or if you did, what
I could just go back to work and I could just have one job.
No, I'm just thinking, was there other ideas that you thought, oh, I could try this, I could try that, this doesn't work? But I
am an entrepreneur. Yeah. It's taken me years to say that. It really has taken, because I grew up in a very traditional, both my parents, the NHS, my husband, my brother, both my brothers, my brother and my brother-in-law's wives, they're all armed forces. I've grown up in a very public sector world, and it still surprises me, and it appalls my mother, that I do this thing that I just get to choose what I do. And that's what I find so hard, actually. That's why going to work is so easy, is because I just know what I'm meant to do, and I just sit down and I do it. And at the end of the day, it's done. Whereas I think with a business, you're thinking on your feet the whole time. My heels are sore because I have a lot of people snapping at them. Like you say, I was very much ahead of the curve on the membership model thing. But it does mean that I have to really
There's no chance
keep moving,
to rest, is there?
Keep innovating. Especially with a membership, there is no chance to rest. I have to be producing content all the time and thinking about stuff. Although there are so many bits that I adore. I've spent the morning, it's Bank Holiday Monday, I have spent the morning redoing my website, and I tell you what, nothing makes me happier than that.
You can get
nothing.
right into it. So what's next then for you? Is there, you've obviously written one book, is there going to be another book?
I would love there to be another book. Can I tell you something really funny? So my mum volunteers in various local charities sorting books, so she's an expert in the quality of vintage books and normal books. So people donate books, she goes through them and she sorts which are worthless and which are quite valuable and which are hidden treasures that need to be sold for a huge amount of money. And she occasionally comes around, she says really like random things to me, and she said make sure that your name is prominent on the spine for when people lay out the bookshops. And I said, I don't think my name's on the spine of my book.
Oh.
And since she pointed this out to me, this was only about a month ago, I have looked at hundreds of books and I have not found another book that doesn't have the name of the author on the spine.
Oh, no.
And I don't know if this was a mistake. I don't know if they just forgot. I genuinely don't know. Literally hundreds of books.
I'm going to go and check
And no
mine.
one has ever... I'm just going to lean to one side because actually you can see a pile behind me. You can see me, but I can't see you. And so
Sarah.
I've been
That's
slightly chancering about the traditional publishing model, but I think this has put the nail in the coffin that I will never publish a traditionally published book again. So yes, I would love to write more books. I would love to do garden diaries type books, which is obviously my newsletter is very much my gardener's journal. I would love to put some of those together and photograph them and publish them really beautifully, but they will be self-published. Yes, and I think the other big thing is we're just starting the renovation of the new cottage, and I would love to use that for photo shoots and workshops and things like that when it's finished.
I'm in.
But obviously that's probably going to be.
I'm in.
You're in. I have had a lot of volunteers.
I'm in.
People to come.
Yeah. Hang on a minute.
So,
there aren't many people that do a podcast with you, so I'm hoping I'm at the front of the...
No. You are definitely...
I can't wait to record a podcast from there. That we'll have to catch up together and do it in one location would be fun.
We will.
Yeah.
We will. Yeah. At the moment, we're at the beam stripping and knocking down walls stage. So
don't race up with your toothbrush just yet. Yeah, exactly.
Don't go for a while. Yeah. So I've just been talking. I was talking to Naomi, my very good friend, Colette, about whether or not to document the renovation on Instagram, whether or not gardening people would be interested in me knocking down and learning how to lime plaster.
Yes.
Because the quote we've had for the exterior walls is £40,000, so I'm going to have to learn to lime plaster myself to do the rest of it because we're not going to be able to afford anything else.
Oh, you could do that thing where you have people stay and actually do it as a craft. Isn't that an amazing place in France? That chateau in France where I'll have to dig it out and add it to the show notes. But there's an incredible place in France where, skilled craftsmen go and they learn this chateau's been renovated by people that have learnt the trade there. So there we are, you just open it up to loads
That sounds very much like getting free labour.
I think it is. It's a huge chateau and I think they've done it as a kind of a school. It's like, we've missed a trick here, Grace.
Absolutely missed it. If anyone would like to come and lime plaster and learn how to do it, I'll lay on a tradesman to teach you. You can do my cottage.
Free tea and coffee, exactly.
Love it. Yeah, it's been absolutely fabulous. Aww. Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure just to chat.
Yeah, it's been really nice, hasn't it? And we're going to have a few weeks off and then we're going to come back for the summer season, aren't we? Because before you know it, it's going to be the longest day, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
It will. And then first week of July, I'll be down in Cornwall.
Yes.
Have to catch up.
Yeah, I need to put that date in my diary, actually, so that I make sure we've got you booked in. That'd be so much fun. And thank you to everybody that's listened to us this season and all your lovely comments and your stars and things like that. It's been really good fun. We'll announce our season 2 via our Instagrams, I'm sure, so people can join along as and when it gets live again.
Yes.
Super.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to you, Becca, for all the time that we've spent together. It's been lovely.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Wishing you a wonderful start to the summer.
I know, and happy bank holiday. Take care, Grace. Lovely to chat to you. Speak soon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.